This is the Fantasy Menace, your number one source for dynasty news and analysis, with your hosts, Jake Sullivan, Brendan Albrizio, and Colin O'Brien. Round 2, Jake. I feel like because so many offensive players went in the first round, there was so much value to be had for defense. So obviously we saw that play out.
Yeah.
Not as many weapons in the second round, but some guys that we talked about that we're pretty high on. First overall pick in the second round, Keon Coleman out of FSU. And I think this is the guy you were starting to talk about.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah. Keon Coleman. I mean, he easily had the best catch in of the season last year over the middle. He had this one-handed, unbelievable up and grab it behind him catch. And that's kind of the player that he is. I think he, 6'3", 213 pounds. We didn't talk about him on the last episode, Brendan, on the wide receivers episode. And I think that was partially because we were just running so long. But here we are an hour and a half essentially into this one. Let's talk about him now, I guess. But 6'3", 213 pounds. He's big, but he is slow. He ran a 4.61 40, so that's a bit of a bummer. But he did have 11 touchdowns last year. So he was certainly the guy from a passing standpoint on that offense. He's a go up and get it guy. He's got strong hands. He loves contested catches. He creates no separation, and he doesn't seem to care. He loves going up and getting it. I don't know if that's going to translate into the NFL, but landing with the Bills, Josh Allen also seems to love those type of throws. So he's going to be throwing the go up and get it catches. Keon Coleman's going to be a guy that loves to do it. He's hungry for it. He plays well over the middle, but he's also going to play on the outside. He had the most contested targets in the NCAA last season. So that's an impressive one to pay attention to. So his catch rate isn't that high as a result of that, right? So they wanted to give him that. They know what they're giving him. They know that the success rate of it. And sometimes he has these unbelievable catches. Other times they get knocked away or whatever. He certainly has no fear of being hit. When you watch him play, he goes up. He knows somebody's coming right at his rib cage, and he doesn't seem to care whatsoever. So he's a bit of a baller in that way. Certainly needs to get a little bit faster, right? So he's going to have to play over the middle until he finds a way to get a little bit faster than that 4.61 40 if he wants to play on the outside and really capitalize on that Josh Allen cannon that he has there. But he's a fun player to watch. He's going to have a lot of highlight plays, I think, but I don't know how frequently he'll have them. So again, very opposite way of what I was saying about Xavier Worthy, but in the same way, might have the same impact for your team where he has these highlight plays every now and then. He'll get the touchdown looks quite often. I think red zone is going to be where he really thrives. And that can be really good for you, but he might be very much touchdown dependent, at least his first season as he starts to develop, and we'll see how far he goes.
Yeah, and you got to love the landing spot for Keon because the tight ends, Dawson and Dalton, were probably looking to be the top targets outside of James Cook, who I think they're going to need to use more. So I feel like Keon, I don't know if it's right to say he's going to slot in as the wide receiver 1, but he's got that build and that ability. Concerned about the speed, but I think it looks like he kind of plays faster. I was surprised by the 4.6 because he's strong and big, and it looked like he played a little bit faster than that. But I think just based on the opportunity, the offense that they're going to have around him, I feel like it's a pretty good landing spot for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think once again the Bills somehow get somebody that people get a little surprised that it happened, but with Stephon Diggs stepping out, Gabe Davis gone, he's going to get his opportunity. And again, like we said, Josh Allen likes giving those type of risky throws. I think to go up and get it throws, and Keon Coleman's going to invite him. So it should be fun to watch. I mean, he's somebody that I don't know where I'd pick him right now in the rookie draft. He's somebody that there is very high upside. And I think, he could have kind of a similar production to what you saw from Cortland Sutton this past year, where Sutton just kept getting touchdowns. It mathematically didn't make sense, yet it kept happening to a point where it became very dependable. So I don't expect that in his rookie season, but that is kind of the hope that you have from somebody that goes up, gets the ball, regardless of who's draped on him, isn't afraid to get hit, and quite frankly can probably take those hits as well. And the volume is there. So and he's tied to a superstar quarterback.
Lots
Brendan,
of lick around him.
Speaking of being tied to a superstar quarterback, we totally missed this earlier. I don't know. I forgot where Lad McConkey landed when we were talking about Justin Herbert. Lad McConkey goes number 2 in the second round, right, to the
To
LA
the
Chargers.
Chargers. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's really interesting because he's the guy that we talked on the last episode wasn't used in the slot as much as he probably should or could have, but everybody's projecting him to be the slot receiver in the NFL. So got all the opportunity in the world. Quentin Johnston, I don't believe is going to turn into anything really. So he's got, I think, somebody who's going to put a great offense together in Harbaugh. Justin Herbert, we love. He's not really fighting with anybody for targets. What outside of QJ, is it Josh Palmer? I think it might be his.
probably.
There's not a
Yeah.
lot going on there. Like the skill, concerned about being banged up, but I think that second round feels about right to me. Landing spot feels good to me. I feel like Lad McConkey, we weren't sure he was in that dude tier when we talked about wide receivers, but moving up maybe toward the top of the dude tier now for me.
Yeah, again, one of the big things that really stood out to me is how he finds the open space, right? He reads, he's very good at reading the defense pre-snap. And again, I think what Harbaugh is looking for, that style of play that he's establishing with that Joe Alt selection, with that kind of run first, run heavy approach, he's going to, Lad McConkey's the type of guy that's really going to benefit from the play action. So he's going to have kind of those quick routes. He's going to know exactly where to sit down on the route and then make something out of it. And he's exciting to watch when he does that. So again, he never had, uh, he played less than 30% of his snaps in college in the slot, even though a lot of people think he plays that slot role. I wouldn't be surprised if they move him there a little bit more uh, in this system, but we'll see. He's going to get his PPR targets. There's no doubt about it. So again, much like Ricky Pearsall, he the opportunity is there from a PPR standpoint. It's exactly the type of production that you want for this wide receiver, and he's gonna get that. Certainly much more certainty that he's going to get the opportunity than what we have with Ricky Pearsall until one of those trades happen we talked about earlier. But Lad McConkey, I like him. I love watching how he plays. I love his style. Just seems like he's going to generate a high floor for you week in and week out as long as he continues to develop the way we think he's going to. And again, tied to a really good quarterback. So I'm disappointed in myself for forgetting that earlier in the recording. But 6 foot, 186 pounds. Want to see him throw a little more weight on him. Whereas Ricky Pearsall is 6'1", 189 pounds. So very similar. Pearsall is just a bit taller. Very similar style of play. I love him.
Harbaugh's going to get in there and get McConkey a couple burgers. He'll have him put on weight.
Yeah, high floor. This is one of the more high floor players I would say out of the wide receivers so far.
Jake, we talked about the fifth pick in the second round earlier. Jalen Polk, wide receiver 2 at Washington, 10th overall. I like the pick. A lot of potential here, as long as the Patriots can draft and develop, which we hope for. Not much for me more to say other than please, Gerard Mayo, be the coach that we need and the developer that we've been hoping for. Be that man.
Yeah. Just one final piece, I guess. What I'll say is that it's very clear that the Patriots are looking beyond 2024. Right? They're not in a rush. I don't think Gerard Mayo has probably been given some serious understanding that, hey, we know this is another rebuild it the right way. Don't panic too much, because it does seem like Jalen Polk needs a little bit of development still. And again, as we talked about earlier, he is a film guru. He goes and he studies the film. He's an addict. So I think they love that. They love that he's going to be able to develop and continue to develop and hone his skill as they're bringing up their young rookie quarterback as well. So I like the pick. I think I wish we got Lad McConkey. We actually traded out of that pick. I think that was our pick, if I recall correctly. So yeah, we traded out of that pick to get Jalen Polk. So it was obvious that we wanted this guy to begin with out of some of the options that were there. Brennan, we have a running back.
We
finally have a running back.
Jonathon Brooks.
Jonathon Brooks.
14th pick in the second round. First running back off the board out of Texas to Carolina Panthers. He doesn't have many people in front of him that he's going to really be fighting with. Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard. These are not your RB1s that you're really hoping for. The biggest question, of course, is the late season injury that he had. It's still unclear to me his recovery timeline. I don't think he's going to be ready for camp, although he said he was. I think by all accounts, it's going to be closer to week 1 would be my guess that he's starting to really heat up. It's a great landing spot for him simply because, again, he's going to have the opportunity. Running backs can make an immediate impact. I would expect for somebody like him, though, coming off the injury, probably going to maybe heat up second half of the season, week 5 or 6. Maybe they start getting him more touches, but really second half of the season type of guy for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to need a little development with this offense. He's not going to have a whole lot of opportunity to build chemistry with him. I will say this: the offense, Carolina is bottom of the barrel, at least based on what we saw last year. However, somebody who's not very talented, Chuba Hubbard, was able to produce in this offense last year. So I thought that was somewhat impressive, and I think Jonathon Brooks is leaps and bounds higher than either of the guys they have in the backfield there. So I agree with you. I think it's a really good landing spot for one of these prospects, and one of the more exciting landing spots out of this draft, I would say, for me, just because the running back depth isn't that deep this year. There is a lot of knocks on these running backs coming in. Jonathon Brooks is right up there. He's either my running back 1 or running back 2. We'll talk about running back 2 in a minute here, where landing spot is also exciting for that one as well. But uh, I think if he's going to succeed in the NFL, he found a good spot to give himself that chance. So again, we kind of made some comparisons to the Jahmyr Gibbs style of play. I don't think he's anywhere near as sharp as Gibbs is in some of his shiftiness, but he's going to be good. I think he can play all around. He's 6 foot, 216 pounds, so he can kind of carry that workload. I think he can play as somewhat of a bell cow. It seems like no teams really do bell cows anymore. So I would expect somewhere around 60 to 70% snap share. And that's great. I think that's going to be perfect for what you want. And he should be able to get some receptions too. So I like this landing spot. And again, it kind of complements the Xavier Leggett. I think you're going to see a lot of end arounds and run options and things like that. And they're going to have to get a little creative. And now they have some of the weapons to do that. So I like this spot a lot. It's fortunate that he landed there.
Yeah, and last year Chuba put up, I couldn't believe this, over 900 yards in that offense. It has to be better than last year, so a lot of opportunity that he can step right into.
Yeah. Yeah, that should be his job pretty quickly as soon as he's healthy.
Jake, I'm gonna butcher this guy's name. He went
Adonai.
Adonai is what I've
Ad-
heard, is
oh,
what Chris
I heard it.
Ballard said.
Oh, I heard
I don't know which
Adonai.
one's right, but number
Okay.
20 in the second round is Adonai or Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver, the 11th wide receiver off the board
I've heard a lot of people
to
call
the
him AD
Colts.
Mitchell, by the way, too. So we might need to just
Let's
go
go
there
with
until we get confirmation.
A Mitchell. He's also really fast. He ran a 4.34 at the combine. It was very fast. That Texas team was really good last year. But do I like the landing spot? I don't know. They've got a lot of wide receiver talent already on the Colts. So I'm a little unsure what's going to happen in this offense. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, we're all projecting him to still be developing and still be very good. But I'm a
You're
little concerned
you're
that
too high on Josh Downs.
I
You're
love
too
Josh
high.
Downs.
No,
He's very small still, which is a major concern to me. But for whatever reason, I just like his game. I like his style. I like his grit. I think that he has real chemistry with Anthony Richardson too. He proved it when they were playing together. I love Michael Pittman, as you know. I'm a big Josh Downs guy, and Alec Pierce wasn't so bad. They have decent young talent. So for me, looking at this, I wonder what is AD gonna do for these guys? Is he gonna take from Alec Pierce? Is he gonna try to step into that? Because I don't think he's gonna disrupt the chemistry that Josh Downs has with Anthony Richardson.
the chemistry from 4 games.
There was a lot. There was a
Right.
lot. And AD doesn't play in the slot, which Josh Downs scares the hell out of me with
You're
him in the slot
misleading
taking those hits.
the Padawans here. Your bias is mislead with the running backs and now with Jonathan Downs. We're getting a little crazy here.
Josh
Look,
Downs.
sure. See that he does. Is
You
he
have no
memorable?
respect for
He's not
Josh
even
Downs.
memorable. He's not even memorable. Listen, uh, 6 foot, 205 pounds. Like you said, he ran a 4.34. So he's fast for that size. There's no doubt about it. He's fluid in his routes. That is one thing that I really like about him, which your boy Josh Downs is also fluid in his routes. I think same for Michael Pittman. I think they all are somewhat smooth route runners, but he seems to be AD seems to be a bit of a craftsman when it comes to working on his routes. He at the same time is very frustrating to watch sometimes. Sometimes he's just running kind of like a go route, but he's doing all sorts of dancing on the way. He's trying to fake out the defender, and sometimes it works. Sometimes he'll fake out a defender more than once and really get him kind of spinning around. And other times he just looks like Lawrence Maroney if Lawrence Maroney was a wide receiver, just dancing way too much. The one there's a couple big problems that I have with him. I think the talent, the skill set is there, but first of all, he fell. I think Ballard was immediately the GM Ballard was immediately addressing the character concerns, which I don't know a whole lot about. But anytime the GM is coming out and addressing it quickly, then it means there is smoke to that fire. And I do think a lot of people thought he was going to go a little bit earlier in the draft. Some of these wide receivers that got picked over him, I think, was surprising to a lot of people. The other thing that I think is concerning to me is he has a very low yard after catch rating, right? So his air yards are 12.2 per target, but his yak is 3.1. So there's kind of a really big discrepancy there. And that really ties to something else that I see a lot of when I watch his tape, which is he gives up on plays, even ones where he shouldn't be. Ones where obviously you shouldn't be giving up on any plays, but there are plays where he seems to have a path or some open space that he gives up on. So that's a really concerning trait to me. Somebody that a is giving up on plays, doesn't seem to have that tenacity that you really want to see from an NFL player, somebody that's supposed to be one of the best, giving up on plays. And then B, that yak kind of adds to it that he's maybe giving up a little too soon. Maybe he doesn't have that dog in him that you need to have to succeed. If he can kind of turn that around, then all of a sudden I think this could be a really talented player. So he's inconsistent. He has some really spectacular plays or some really spectacular routes, and then he has these wacky routes, right? And or just lazy play. So uh, he also dealt with a pretty serious high ankle sprain a couple of years ago that I think took him a long time to recover from. He was a 3-star recruit in Georgia, so he went to Georgia first, and then he supposedly moved down to Texas to be close to his daughter, I think. But we'll see. He's perplexing to me. It's one of those frustrating prospects where you say this guy could be so much if he just has the right head on his shoulders, and I'm not sure that he does. And again, I don't know what the character concerns are, but the stuff you see on the field is concerning to me. Though that lack of effort, that lazy approach sometimes, where you just God, this guy's got everything he needs to succeed. He just needs to try harder sometimes.
Yeah, and Ballard came out in the press conference, eviscerated the anonymous sourcing and the rumors, and I thought that was the right thing. I don't know what is true with AD on off the field. I'll just say this, that it doesn't feel like there are going to be enough targets for everybody that the Colts have in that receiver room. So somebody is going to be the odd man out. It
Josh
could be
Downs.
Alec Pierce, but it could be AD as well. So that's my only concern, is there's a
Could be
lot of
Josh
risk
Downs.
there. It's not going to be Josh Downs. I love Josh Downs too much, and so does AR. But we'll have to see. All right, Jake. Second tight end off the board. 21 in the second round. Ben Sinott went
He's the
to
last. He's the
Washington.
last one we're going to talk about too, because the other guy is strictly a blocker from what we've seen. So, yeah, Ben Sinnott going to Washington out of Kansas State, 6'4", 250. He's a little closer to kind of that stereotypical tight end. If you go back and listen to our episode, our running backs and tight ends episode, we like the progress that this guy has made. Right, he came in. I think he was the third tight end that we covered, but he kind of was a nobody. He was I don't think he was even recruited. And then he worked his way up. He worked his way up. He worked his way up. And he really became reliable. He can block, but he also can be a wide receiver, or he can not wide receiver, but he can be a receiving option for that team. So I think that's why he got drafted as high as he did. I think, again, we talked about Zach Ertz being the other weapon there. So he has plenty of opportunity to turn into that guy. And he has the skill set to play on all types of plays, right? Running plays, third downs, whatever it may be. He has the ability to learn the role he has to play, and he'll play it. And some of that will be, the target of the play. So I like this, landing spot for him. I just don't, he's not this natural athlete. He's worked hard to get to where he is, and I think that's a great thing. So he probably has a bit of a ceiling to that, but at the same time, he grinds. So going from talking about AD Mitchell to this guy is kind of quite the jump, right? Because it's almost the opposite approach.
Exact opposite
Yeah,
of what we're talking about here. Yeah, Sinott, and I think that that's the term, right, Jake? It's grinder. He is
yeah,
a grinder.
yeah.
He doesn't. Zach Ertz is on the backside of his career, so he's not going to be in Washington for very long.
No,
We always talk about tight ends, longer time horizon. He's super interesting to me, though, because he played fullback and he still lines up in the backfield some. So I'm super curious what Washington is going to do here if they're going to have him in the backfield and on the line. With the draft capital, you have to think that they're looking to him to be the Zach Ertz replacement. So they probably have a development plan that spans 2-3 years, which again, that's what you're looking for tight ends too. I really thought that Jatavion Sanders would have gone in somewhere in the second or third round just based on his receiving skills. Sinna is more of a good receiver, but an athlete and somebody that is reliable. So very interesting to me. It's as good a landing spot for me as he was going to get with the development in the time horizon. I just worry that if they start using him as a fullback and as a tight end, you're just never going to see reliable production out of him.
yeah, yeah. I agree. So not exciting, but also, good for him. I think you're going to want him on your roster. He's not going to be a top tier tight end, but he certainly might be somebody that's dependable if you structure your roster around other positions. He'll be a good placeholder for you there.
And that's it for the second round.
A bit of
Let's
a
move.
shorter round there.
A lot of defensive players in the second round. Third round, first pick. I'm also going to butcher this guy's name.
Malachi.
Malachi Corley
Yeah.
went to the Jets in the first pick of the second round out of Western Kentucky. Jake, he was not anywhere close to the dude here. He was so far below.
Yeah.
I
Appa-
feel like
Apparently Jets love him. Apparently they really wanted him.
he's an interesting size at 5'11", 207. So he's thicker, but a little bit shorter. I'm not sure what to think of the Jets team as a whole. And it is going to be mostly off the field stuff for right now because I think that bleeds over into the locker room. So you've got on the field, the issue is that Aaron Rodgers coming off the Achilles. What are you going to get at all from him? So that's problem one. They have beefed up the offensive line. So one of their biggest problems, obviously, was blocking. They seem to have resolved that. In the backfield,
They drafted an offensive lineman too, right? I
and
think they
they
did
did, yes.
earlier. Yeah.
So they're investing there. You love Brees Hall. He's not my wide receiver one, or running back run, excuse me. I think
He
he
should
might
be.
be your RB1. Yeah,
Who's your RB1?
it's Bijan still. It's Bijan simply because I think he's a better receiver. Garrett Wilson, we love Garrett Wilson. So it's not like Corley is going to be fighting with a lot of people for receptions. He's just an odd player. He had 985 yards last year. Wasn't especially good in contested catches. Contested catch rate was 23.5% out of Western Kentucky. So he's not playing top tier talent. What's the plan here for Corley? Like what are they going to do? And what are you even going to get out of Aaron Rodgers?
The plan is the same as what the plan is for Xavier Legette. I think again, you want to manufacture touches. It's gonna be low A dot. It's gonna be yak, right? I think he's a big yak player. He's extremely physical. He get the ball in his hands and he wants to roll you over. And I think the way that the Jets are structured, you have your superstar in Garrett Wilson. You have Mike Williams there now, who's going to be kind of that deep threat every now and then you have kind of the manufactured touches guy. And again, everybody wants to keep making comparisons. Debo Samuel is the new Tyreek Hill. Everybody wants to make comparisons to Debo Samuel, but I think the two Debo Samuel comparisons in this draft this year are Malachi Corley and Xavier Legette, and I think both of them are going to be utilized the same way. I think he could play a role in this on this offense. And at 5'11", 207 pounds, that's kind of right in that wheelhouse where you want to be for that style of play. Um, I just think I think they've structured this offense a very specific way now, and it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of weapons here. I didn't know anything about this guy up until a couple days ago, so I've done a lot of film study since then. But I do know that the Jets were very anxious to get him. And I think they almost took him a little bit earlier, and then they had a feeling he was going to drop. So, did they trade up to grab him? I think they did. I think they may have traded for that pick.
Yeah, this was. Let me
It
just
was
see.
the first pick of the third round,
Yeah, they
right? So,
traded with Carolina.
yeah, so they really liked him, and there was a lot of reports that they really liked this guy. So we'll see how it goes. And you have to assume that Aaron Rodgers has some say in some of this. I think that was part of the reason why he came to the Jets. So he must like this guy too. So we'll see how it goes. A lot of this style of or wide receivers that are coming in that are tough to gauge who's better at it than the next. But this guy, again, the number one thing I can say is he's extremely physical. He loves inviting contact. So get the ball, he runs right at you, tucks his shoulder, tries to plow you over, and sometimes he will. So it would be interesting to watch how he plays. But again, some of this style, you worry a little bit about the longevity, but he'll get the touches. So should be
Yep.
good.
It'd be interesting. I just as Aaron goes, this I feel like this entire team goes. So for me, he's the biggest question mark. If he's not the Aaron Rodgers of old, I'm not sure you can really rely on anyone outside of Garrett Wilson, who's the
Yeah,
seemingly the only person that has proved he can play with bad quarterbacks.
right.
Jake, second pick in the third round.
Ooh,
This is the running back round here.
great landing spot.
Trey Benson goes to Arizona. Trey
Trey
Benson,
Benson.
Florida State. Second running back taken. I think a good landing spot since he's just got James Conner there, and James Conner is good. But like I said earlier, I think he's just got this year, and then it's over for
James
James
Conner's
Conner.
breaking down again, it seems, for sure. And again, this is going to be a potent offense. So this This or the Cowboys, I think, were the 2 spots I really wanted to see him land, maybe the Chargers as well, but he went exactly where I hoped he would go. I think they're gonna utilize him. This is gonna be a potent offense, there's no doubt about it. They've already invested in Marvin Harrison Jr. I alluded to this Trey Benson conversation a little bit later on. It's been him and Jonathon Brooks that I've been wrestling with as my, running back 1 all along, and this just made it even more difficult because again, I think Jonathon Brooks is a little more of an all-around style player. This guy is a bruiser. He's not lateral at all. He doesn't have really any agility. I think his Madden score for agility would be probably a 10 out of 100. But boy, can he run you over. He ran a 4.39. Brendan, again, we have a discrepancy in his size, but I have him as a little bit bigger. But either way, 6 foot, 216 pounds is what you have him listed at here with a 4.39 40. That's incredibly fast with a lot of speed behind it. Uh, he's never fumbled. In 2022, he broke the record for PFF with most forced missed tackles when he was playing for Arizona. He dances a little bit too much, but he also had he has a very good speed control. So I said this in the last episode and it stood out to me. I said it towards the end. I want to say a little bit earlier. His kind of start stop ability is really impressive to me, that he can slow down and then all of a sudden accelerate extremely fast. So instead of kind of juking, he does a little bit more of that to really throw the defense off. And then with that acceleration comes a whole lot of power behind tucking the shoulder every now and then. So he is a home run waiting to happen a lot of times. And he is very tough to bring down. And again, that body type, spent a whole lot of time airbrushing around this guy's massive legs, and that the upper body's a little bit narrower, so he's got that power down below and he's kind of got that shake and bake up top. So I really like this landing spot. He's going to get a ton of opportunity to score touchdowns, and I think he's just that style of player to do it. When they get in that red zone, they're going to want to hand it to him, but also he can break off the big. He can kind of play that Kenneth Walker style for you as well, where all of a sudden he can just break off a 65-yarder and nobody's catching him. So very exciting prospect for me. I do think there's a few running backs in this that I'm excited about. I think the slander towards the running backs going into this draft has been a little overblown, and I like this prospect. If he can learn how to get a little more agile too, and add that level to his game, he really becomes something special there. He never got the bell cow role in college. He averaged 13.5 carries per game in his college career. So not very high there. You hope that he gets a little closer to 20 to really start rolling, especially as that defense starts getting more and more tired towards the end of the game, where he can just start rolling over people. So
And you'd expect this year too that he's not going to need to be the bell cow with James Conner there. James Conner, 28 years old, so that cliff is coming, but at least Trey doesn't have to be immediate RB1. I agree with you. I think that this is a great landing spot for him. Offense should be better. Kyler, a year removed now from another year removed, excuse me, from the ACL tear. We all think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be excellent. Trey McBride is excellent already. So a lot to like about that. And then next year, my expectation would be that Trey Benson, with a decent rookie year, can step into that. And he doesn't have a lot of mileage on him, which I go back and forth if not having a ton of carries in college is a good or bad thing. I think it might be a good thing. It's not like he doesn't have the size in to withstand some of the hits, although he didn't have pretty bad injuries in his past, but it's not like he
Well,
doesn't have the
he
ability
had
to
a
withstand.
horrible injury. So
Yeah, that
that is
knee.
right. He dislocated his knee, tore every ligament in his knee, tore his ACL, LCL, MCL, meniscus, and tore his hamstring. Right.
Yeah,
So
and that was 4 years
that's
ago. It was 4 years
that's
ago.
devastating. Right. It was 4 years ago, but it probably is why he had such a low carries per game, is because he slowly kind of crawled back towards being able to depend on his knee again. So I do think that's helped him, to your point, from a tread standpoint. A lot of tread left on those tires. So that's great. I think people are undervaluing this guy. I really do. I think from a fantasy production standpoint, he doesn't need to catch a whole bunch of balls. I think he's going to get yard after yard after yard. It's not going to be these huge chunks, but every now and then he will break off. And again, once he's in that red zone, I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity to get into the end zone. And I think he has that skill set to do it. So I'm excited about him. I like it.
Yeah, and I feel like what I want to do next, Jake, is I feel like there's wide receivers, Jermaine Burton, Roman
Yeah.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Let's skip over those guys because this is really the running back round for me. So I want to talk about the 19th pick in the third round, Blake
Ooh.
Corrum, the
Ooh.
third running back, obviously out of Michigan. We talk about tread. I don't know how much tread this guy's got. I love his attitude, but I don't know that I especially like the landing spot. I think that Sean McVay has a history of taking shorter running backs, starting with my boy Daryl Henderson, and just casting them aside. What does this do for Kyron Williams? I feel like Blake Corum is I'm shocking. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but he's a slightly faster Kyron Williams without the receiving prowess
And
that Kyron
he's
Williams
not that
had.
fast. He's
Yeah, and
not
he's not
that
even
fast.
that fast. So what? I'm
Yeah.
concerned that this was not, even though he has good draft capital at round 3, I'm concerned with how this helps him or Kyron.
Well, yeah, it hurts both for sure. They're very similar style players. Brennan, I just want to share. I shared this with you guys in the group chat, but I did see a comment on Reddit today that really cracked me up. And we do have a bit of a Star Wars theme behind our show here with the Fantasy Menace. But I saw the top comment on the news of Blake Corum being signed, saying, "I felt a great disturbance in fantasy, as if millions of Kyron Dynasty owners suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced. I fear something terrible has happened." I mean, that is how you got to feel about this. I love Kyron Williams. It's a shame that Collins not on today, because I know Collins has him. He has him ranked very high. I also have Kyron ranked pretty high. This really hurts him. I really think so. They have almost an identical style of playing. I think Kyron might be a little more on the receiving side, which can help with his value a bit. But both kind of those small guys that you almost lose in the trenches that all of a sudden break free. And I think it's going to be this kind of 1-2 punch to keep their legs fresh, just keep doing that over and over again. And that's going to be really frustrating. You're not going to know who to start. So I definitely have Kyron over Blake Corum, but I like Blake Corum coming in. The one thing that we're transitioning from Trey Benson to this that's important to point out, though, is that Blake Corum's tread on his tires is much thinner. It's much more worn. I think he had over 500 carries. So he's been used quite a bit in Michigan. He did a great job with it, but you got to expect that that's going to start catching up to him at some point. And again, we say this all the time, the running back window, you're looking at maybe 4 years when you go and you draft a running back, but they play a huge role in your ability to win a championship. So that's not going to concern me too much, but that 4-year window might close kind of quick for him. I just don't know. It's frustrating. This was another very frustrating draft pick. I was happy to see that he went in the third round. Again, we want to see running backs be drafted in the third round or earlier. So that's where we started to see a bunch of them go. But this landing spot was up there with one of my more frustrating landing spots because I think Blake Corum is a very serviceable back that can play in any of these offenses. And he's never going to be the bell cow like he was in college, but he'll play a really good role there. And I just think when you pair him with Kyron, you don't know who's going to get what or when. And I don't think that's going to be very conscious. I think it's really going to be a lot about keeping their workload balanced so that they're fresh throughout the entire game and capitalizing on that tired defense.
Yeah, the Venn diagram of Kyron and Blake Corum it overlaps a fair amount. You're right. Kyron is a seemingly better receiver than Blake Corum is, and so I do think that this is going to be extremely frustrating. I imagine this year is going to be a lot of hot hand plus watching how many snaps these guys are out there for and mixing. So I'm not sure that you can expect anything. I wonder if it's not going to be if this isn't just going to be who's going to score the touchdown is going to have the double digit day. So I love Blake Corum, love his grit, but really disappointed with the landing spot here.
Yeah. Yep. That brings us to our last one, Brendan.
Oh boy, 25th in the third round. Marshawn Lloyd to Green Bay. We talked about Marshawn Lloyd, talked about the fumbling. You critiqued his running style,
I did.
but what do you think about the landing spot?
Love the landing spot. They got Dalvin Cook there right now. Is that right? Is that where he is? No. No, sorry, Josh Jacobs. That's who's gone there. So maybe I take that back. Don't love the landing spot, but it's going to be a nice kind of yin to Josh Jacobs yang. I would say he's not that style of runner. Again, we were comparing him a little bit to a unreliable DeAndre Swift, which depending on how you feel about DeAndre Swift, Brendan, I know how you feel about him. I know how you
An
feel. I
unreliable
feel
DeAndre Swift.
yeah, yeah. So not a great thing there, but he's a shifty player, and I think when I critique his style of run, sometimes again what we said in the last episode, and I stand by, he was by far the most exciting running back to watch in this year's draft. Some of his highlights, even some of his lowlights, were extremely exciting to watch, but uh, a ton of inconsistency here. Brendan, how old is he? Is he the one that I got wrong? Is he 23 or no?
Marshawn Lloyd is not 23 years old.
Okay, he's the one I got wrong
No, I'm
last.
sorry. He is 23. He was
Okay,
not the. He's
Jalen
the
Wright is the one I got wrong.
yes.
So, anyways, 23 years old and has to kind of wait for Josh Jacobs to really tail off, which could be fairly soon. But again, you're starting to look at a long window before you expect this guy to be somebody you can really depend on. But the talent is there. His hand size, we shared this last time, small hands, 14th percentile, but his body mass index is in the 97th percentile. So that all leads to he fumbled 1 in every 36 touches in his college career, which is just unbelievable. So small hand size is a big piece of it. But again, some of that wacky running and some of that um, some of the way that he chooses to play, he plays recklessly. He has all sorts of highlight moves in his back pocket, but he also doesn't play very smart. So I think he's going to be on a short leash with that, as he should be in any single NFL team that he joins. And if he continues with the fumbling problems, you can see him disappear very quickly. But if he shores that up, he can be an electric piece for that offense, and I think that'll be fun to watch. It's an ascending offense. It's a very young team. I think it was the youngest roster in the NFL last year. So adds another semi-young player to it that he could get a piece of the pie with.
Yeah, it's decent draft capital for me. I went back and forth on the landing spot. Josh Jacobs, another guy that's got a lot of tread. I'm sorry, has not as much tread on his tires. Heavy usage on the ground, heavy usage in the pass game. If Josh Jacobs, he's 26 years old. If we think he might have 3 years left, then I think that this is a really, really bad situation for Marshawn Lloyd. If Josh Jacobs at 27 looks like Dalvin Cook at 27 and starts really falling off a cliff, then I think as long as Marshawn Lloyd can fix the fumbling issue, I think this could be a very good landing spot, but entirely dependent on what Josh Jacobs does. So a lot of risk there. I guess where I'm landing is I don't love the spot for Marshawn Lloyd. You'd like to see that they don't have a younger back that was just signed to a longer term deal in front of him. has the fumbling as we talked about, so needs some development there. Good talent though. Good talent. It's just Josh Jacobs, a volume guy. He's somebody that has to have 240 to 250 touches. I mean, he had 2 years ago in 2022, he had 340. I don't think he's going to get that, but Green Bay signed him to be the RB1. So
Yeah.
tough for me. If Josh Jacobs falls off a cliff, I think that this is a good landing spot, but there's a lot of risk there.
Yeah, I think the hope that might be why they brought him in, right? What you were just saying about kind of Josh Jacobs' age and kind of how he's going to last a little bit longer. It might be to spell him, and I think maybe what you're looking for here is you're hoping for a little bit of kind of that Derrick Henry versus Tajay Spears last year approach, right? Where you still got that bruiser that's going to go up the middle. Marshawn Lloyd is definitely a different style running back, I would say, than Tajay Spears, but not that much different. And he is shifty. One other piece. So look, I'll end on a positive. So I'm going to give you a pretty big negative that I forgot to say in this episode. That I think it was Underdog Fantasy that I first heard this stat from a little while ago. But Marshawn Lloyd only hit the designed hole on a carry on 50% of the time that he carried the ball, which is incredibly low. That is going to get you benched so fast if you just keep trying to improvise. And not only that, you add that to the fumbling. He's got an extremely short leash that he's got a big hill to climb, I think, to get into good graces. But again, on the other side of that, the good note I'm referring to, he did lead the country in yards after carry and missed tackles last year. So he can be electric. He's just got to get smart, and maybe having Josh Jacobs in front of him might be a really good thing for him to learn from him a bit. But I think, again, the hope is kind of the Tajay Spears type of production for you. And it's not incredibly exciting. I think that's going to make him, a mid second round pick, especially with how many wide receivers there are this draft this year. But they're already looking to spell Josh Jacobs a bit, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think this hurts Josh Jacobs that much at all. So we'll see. Again, I hope he works out because, again, he can be electric. When you watch him, he is a lot of fun. So watch his highlights if you want to get pumped up about it, and maybe he'll swindle you into drafting him earlier than you should.
Yeah, and he's the fourth running back off the board. So I think today he's going to be super interesting for me in these rounds. Where does somebody like Jalen Wright go? Where does somebody, you brought up Braylon Allen, the whispers about him?
Big boy. Big boy.
Did you say Dallas is the latest rumor?
If he goes to Dallas, is kind of as I'm pointing out. If Braylon Allen goes to Dallas in the fourth round, if he goes any later than fourth round, I don't care anymore. But if he goes to Dallas in the fourth round, all of a sudden that's somebody to keep your eye on as well. And Jalen Wright is somebody that we all like. So I was a little surprised, especially Marshawn Lloyd went before Jalen Wright. But we'll see. I think the fourth round is actually going on right now as we speak, Brendan. So he could have already been drafted. That could be exciting. But yeah, other than those two guys, I don't know if there's anybody else to really look out for from a running back standpoint.
It was a tough year for running backs coming in. I think we saw that play out in the draft. But rounds 4 through 7 are going on right now. And I think that's it for the show, Jake. This is a super episode.
One. Super ep.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Don't forget us to like, subscribe, follow on Apple or Spotify or wherever you catch the show.
YouTube. Find this on YouTube.
We are out.